The stage lights buzzed overhead like anxious insects as Donald Trump leaned forward at the debate podium, his smirk sharp as ever. Across from him, Ibrahim Trore stood still, arms at his sides, his eyes unreadable. "Let's make one thing clear," Trump declared, his voice booming across the auditorium. "America decides. We decide the rules, the winners, the global future." A ripple moved through the American audience. Applause from some uneasy murmurs from others. Traoré didn't move. He didn't blink. When he finally spoke, it wasn't loud, but it was seismic. "Not in my house," he said simply. The room shifted. There was no shouting, no raised hand, no frantic counter, just that calm sentence sitting between them like a wall of iron. Trump tilted his head as if amused. "Your house? Let me remind you, you're on our stage in our country, speaking our language." Trore stepped forward once, not as a threat, but as a statement of presence. "And yet, your cameras are on me." The moderator tried to cut in, but the attention was sealed. Trore's posture was poised. No fist, no lecturing finger, just the stillness of a man unafraid to take up space where he wasn't. Invited. "You talk of rules," Traoré continued, "but the people who made your rules never asked us what we needed. You decided what was best for us, and now you wonder why we speak without your permission." Trump chuckled. "You should be grateful. Without America, you'd still be fighting in the mud." The audience tensed. Traoré let the silence linger. Then, with unflinching steadiness, "Without America, we wouldn't be rebuilding from what was taken." There it was, the shift, the clash of worlds. One man anchored in empire and spectacle, the other forged in resistance and memory. It wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a collision of realities, and the crowd felt it. Trump adjusted his tie and gave a practiced laugh, the kind that filled stadiums and campaign rallies. "We gave you aid. We gave you democracy. What have you given the world?" Traoré's reply was instant. "Endurance. We gave the world proof that survival is not submission." The moderator glanced nervously at the control booth. This wasn't unfolding like any other televised debate. The structure had cracked. The two men weren't exchanging policies. They were exchanging identities, worldviews, and scars. Trump leaned in, sensing his audience slipping. "You think slogans and spirit can compete with superpower status? You want to rewrite the world order with poetry?" Trore's lips curled not into a smile, but something colder. "I don't write poetry," he said. "I write terms, and I don't need your permission to sign them." The auditorium rippled again. Journalists in the back began typing faster. "You're a soldier," Trump barked, "not a diplomat. Stay in your lane." Traoré nodded, slow and deliberate. "You're right. I'm a soldier, and soldiers rebuild what diplomats destroy." That was the moment the camera caught Trump's jaw tighten. Just a twitch, but enough to betray the shift. For the first time, it wasn't clear who was in control of the narrative. "You build walls," Traoré continued, voice steady. "We build people. You create allies through dependence. We forge loyalty through dignity." Trump tried to interrupt. "You wouldn't last a week without American protection." Traoré's eyes didn't flinch. "We lasted centuries under occupation. Don't mistake silence for weakness." We were waiting for the right time to speak. The crowd hushed. Even the moderator's voice cracked as she tried to regain order. This wasn't a debate. It was an exorcism of power, of assumptions, of the idea that one nation always led while the others followed. And Traoré wasn't following. He was rewriting. By the third round of questions, the moderator had all but given up trying to guide the conversation. What started as a scheduled dialogue about foreign policy had unraveled into something raw, more elemental. It was no longer about alliances. It was about ownership of history. Trump stood stiffly, arms crossed, trying to reclaim the airspace. with bluster. We've invested billions in your continent, in infrastructure, in aid, in stability. That's generosity, pure and simple. Traoré tilted his head slightly, the movement subtle yet searing. You call it generosity. We call it control, with a bull on it, the audience murmured. Even the usually boisterous front row of Trump supporters had grown quiet. Trump waved a dismissive hand. You're biting the hand that feeds you. No, Traoré replied. I'm removing the leash you dressed as help. That line didn't just land. It exploded. Online. The clip was already being cut, shared, captioned. Removing the leash began trending before the segment even ended. A producer backstage whispered to the director, "He's not supposed to dominate this segment." The reply came, flat. "Doesn't matter, he already has." Trump pointed a finger sharp and accusatory. "You think you're clever, but without our markets, your voice is a whisper." Traoré didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Then listen closely. Whispers grow into winds, and winds erase empires. The metaphor hit harder than any policy bullet point because it wasn't abstract. It was memory legacy, a wound being spoken out loud. "You know what I think?" Trump said, voice rising, trying to seize momentum. "You're here for the show. Just another rebel looking for applause." For the first time, Traoré smiled. "I don't lead for applause," he said. "I lead without it." And just like that, the tone of the room changed. No more laughter. No more posturing. Trump's smirk faded slowly, like a man realizing too late that the spotlight had moved. The mic wasn't in Traoré's hand, but the moment was. The producers backstage scrambled as viewership numbers spiked mid-broadcast. Clips were already circulating on social media. TikTok, stitched with captions like "Traoré just took the crown off the table and Trump finally met his match." Inside the studio, the silence between exchanges had grown longer, heavier. Even the lights seemed quieter. Trump tried again, this time measured. "You think power is built with words, with pride? That's not how the world works. Power is leverage, money, muscle, nuclear muscle." Traoré didn't blink. "Then I suppose I'm not here to play by your world's rules." Trump stepped forward, using his size to loom, a strategy that had intimidated many. But Traoré didn't lean back. He didn't even twitch. "Intimidation," Trore said. "Voicecom works on people afraid of losing something. I have nothing to lose. I already lost my childhood to war, my elders to colonialists, my country's wealth to your policies." He paused. "Now it's your turn to feel watched, to feel questioned. You're not the only one holding the mic anymore." Trump opened his mouth, but nothing came. "Respect," Trore continued, "can't be borrowed. It has to be taken, and you've mistaken obedience for respect for too long." The moderator looked stunned. She whispered into her earpiece, "We need to cut to commercial." "No," said the producer in her ear. "Let it burn." Trore turned toward the audience. Not the studio audience, but the millions watching across the world. "Leadership," he said, "isn't domination. It's vision. You called it dangerous when we stopped following you. That's because you only feel safe when we're beneath you." Trump stiffened, jaw clenched. "You say you lead the free world," Trore said. "But what good is freedom when it's yours to give or take?" No response. Not yet. Just that tension again. The kind you feel before an empire stumbles. The next question was meant to diffuse something harmless about trade routes in the Sahel. But no one cared anymore. The debate wasn't about logistics. It was about legitimacy. Trump leaned on the podium now. The swagger in his voice had thinned. "So what then? You want the world to revolve around you? Around Burkina Faso?" Traoré looked at him, not with anger, but something more dangerous. Pity. "No," he said, "I want the world to stop revolving around you." There it was. The line that would be clipped, replayed, translated into 30 languages and plastered across every social feed from Lagos to Los Angeles. Trump snorted. "You sound ungrateful and you sound outdated," Trore replied. "Gratitude is for gifts. What you offer comes with strings, contracts, conditions, and consequences." He stepped forward, slow but sure. "You give aid, we give minerals. You give loans, we give our land. You call it charity, we call it extortion." The moderator tried to move on. "Let's turn now to—" "No," Traoré interrupted softly. "Let's stay here. Let's stay in this discomfort because that's the problem, isn't it? You built a world where only your pain matters, where only your fears shape policy, where your democracy is the model but never the mirror. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't clap, but they leaned in." Trump, unusually quiet, said, "You've had your say." Trore's voice didn't rise. "No, I've had your stage. Now I want your silence." The studio turned. So did the world. Even Trump's most loyal aides backstage could see it. The room didn't belong to him anymore. Not the way it used to. The power wasn't in the podium. It was in the pulse of the words. And right now, all of that pulsed through Traoré. And as Trump's mouth opened to respond, Traoré simply turned back to the moderator. "I'm done answering old questions," he said. "Ask me something new." The moderator cleared her throat. "President Trore, then what does a new world order look like to you?" That was the question. Trump turned slightly, clearly eager to pounce, expecting vague idealism. Or worse, silence. But Traoré didn't flinch. He folded his hands, eyes steady, posture regal without. "Arrogance. It looks like truth being louder than tradition," he said. "It looks like no child growing up learning to thank a foreign flag for their survival. It looks like nations, mine and others, being allowed to define themselves without consulting. Washington, Paris, or Tel Aviv first," Trump scoffed. "You're romanticizing chaos." "No," Trore said. "You're mistaking your order for stability. You think because your systems lasted, they were right. But endurance isn't virtue. It's just repetition." He turned his gaze now directly to the camera. "You built systems where votes are paid for, not earned, where the media manufactures consent, where the global south is only called developing because your hands are still on the lever." Trump jumped in. "That's how global diplomacy works. Agreements, frameworks, alliances. It's not oppression. It's organization." Traoré didn't miss a beat. "You called it a system. I call it a cage. Just because the bars are gold doesn't mean we're free." There was a shift in the audience. Not just approval, but awakening. Trump leaned forward. "You speak like a man with nothing to lose." "I speak like a man who reclaimed everything," Trore said. "My people, my soil, my name. You thought the world would stay tilted in your favor. It won't." A low hum moved through the room. Then for the first time that night, Trore leaned in too. "You once decided who sat at the table," he said. "But now we're building our own." Trump didn't speak. He just stared, jaw flexing, because somewhere in that moment he understood this wasn't just a debate, it was a declaration. The moderator tried to reset. "Let's return to foreign aid policies," but no one was returning to anything. The studio had already crossed the line. It wasn't about aid, it was about agency. Trump, clearly irritated now, waved a dismissive hand. "You speak like history just started, like America didn't rebuild the post-war world, like we didn't give order to chaos." Trore raised an eyebrow. Order or obedience? He didn't wait for a reply. "You rebuilt the world in your image," he said, "but you never asked who wanted to look like you." Trump gestured broadly, arms open. "We gave structure, trade, stability, rules, and those rules always benefited you first," Trore replied. "When we followed them, you praised us. When we questioned them, you sanctioned us. When we defied them, You invaded us." A hush settled over the room. Traor's tone remained calm, almost surgical. "You see yourself as the center, but the world is shifting. You had the map. We have the compass. We don't need to follow the path you carved with war and wealth." Trump, voice rising, snapped. "Then enjoy the jungle." Trore nodded. "We will, because we know how to survive it. Unlike you, we never burned the forest to plant flags." A murmur swept the audience. And then Trore did something no one expected. He smiled. Not smug, not theatrical. Just assured. "Empires don't fall. In explosions," he said. "They crumble when people stop looking up." Trump's nostrils flared. His usual verbal arsenal felt dulled. Traoré, meanwhile, had taken control of the tempo, of the energy, of the narrative. The moderator, visibly shaken, whispered into her mic again, and in living rooms across the globe, viewers leaned forward not to hear Trump's comeback, but to hear what Traoré would say next. Trump now stood rigid, lips thin, eyes cold. The audience was still with Traoré, restless but alert, like something historic was unfolding and no one dared look away. "Enough with the poetry," Trump barked. "This is real power. Sanctions, troops, dollars, votes. That's what moves the world." Traoré tilted his head, amused. "And still, you lost control of this room with nothing but a sentence." Trump stepped forward. "You don't have leverage. You don't have force. What do you even bring to this stage?" Traoré didn't raise his voice. He didn't blink. "I bring story," he said, "and story outlives steel." Trump let out a short, bitter laugh. "Spare me. Stories don't stop missiles." "No," Trore answered, "but they stop men from firing them." He turned, again to the audience, then to the camera, now speaking beyond the room, to the world. "You used sanctions like signatures, each one a decree from a throne you never earned. But we, our nations, our peoples, we write stories of resistance, of rebuilding, of refusing to vanish." He walked slowly to the edge of his podium. "You write borders. We write bloodlines. You write debt. We write dignity. You write nations as clients. We write them as families." Trump narrowed his eyes. "You think you're noble. You're just noise." Trore nodded. "Funny. They said the same of every movement before it won." A silence dropped like a curtain. In that stillness, Trore placed his final strike, measured, precise. "You built walls to keep us out. But now, we don't want in. We want something else entirely." Trump stared, jaw clenched. "What's that?" he muttered. Traoré smiled again. "A world that doesn't need you to approve it." The crowd didn't cheer. They breathed together as if for a moment they believed that world could be real. Trump adjusted his mic, visibly rattled. His usual dominance in televised confrontation was slipping like sand. Even his supporters in the room, those who once fed on his bravado, had gone quiet. "You're delusional," Trump snapped. "You think just because some people clap for you on social media, you're a threat to global power?" "I'm not a threat," Trore said calmly. "I'm a mirror." "And the reflection terrifies you." Trump leaned forward. "You don't understand leadership." "You confuse leadership with command," Trore answered. "You think control is respect, but real leaders don't need followers. They inspire builders." Trump scoffed. "You sound like a rebel with a microphone, and you sound like a king without a kingdom." Trore shot back. "Your grip weakens every time someone speaks without asking your permission." There it was, the crowd, stirred. Trump's brows furrowed. "You forget who you're talking to." "No," Trore said. "I know exactly who I'm talking to. A man who thinks the crown he once wore still fits. But the world's head has changed shape." Trump pointed a finger. "I'm still the most powerful man in the world." "Then why are you shouting?" Traoré asked, voice unshaken. "Power doesn't scream. It simply is." The studio lights seemed to glow hotter. Traoré moved a step forward, closing the invisible gap. "Your crown is cracking," he said, "and beneath it, we don't see gold. We see fear." Trump stood frozen. A beat then, too. Traoré continued. "You thought history would end with your name etched on it. But history keeps writing, and your chapter is shrinking." At that moment, something shifted in the viewers. The broadcast wasn't just a debate. It felt like the symbolic handing off of something older than politics, something imperial, generational, unspoken. And Traoré wasn't asking for it. He was taking it. The final moments felt heavier than anything that came before. No raised voices, no dramatic outbursts, just a tense, suffocating silence that made even the camera operators forget to breathe. Trump, red-faced and rigid, tried one last swing. "You can't rewrite the rules," he muttered. "This world doesn't change just because you want it to." Traoré responded without blinking. "Then it'll change without asking." The moderator, pale and wide-eyed, didn't dare interrupt. This was no longer her show. The baton had already passed hands silently, irreversibly. Traoré let his gaze drift across the studio, then to the audience, then to the millions watching through screens around the world. "We don't rise because we're allowed," he said. "We rise because we're done asking," he continued, his voice quiet, but unshakable. "You mistook silence for obedience. You mistook restraint for weakness, and you mistook applause for power. But we've been building while you've been performing." Trump folded his arms, trying to look unbothered, but his fingers twitched. "You came to remind me who decides," Trore said. "I came to remind you. Not here. Not anymore." A pause. "In this house," Traoré added, "we speak truth, not protocol. We choose people over puppets. We don't bow. We build a long beat, one that felt biblical." Then Trump, arms still crossed, muttered, "You think this is the beginning of something?" Trore's smile returned. "It already began," he said. "You just weren't invited." The broadcast ended on that line. No thunder, no music, just a freeze frame of two men, one still clinging, one already walking forward. And the world, for once, didn't look back. They called it a debate, but it wasn't. It was a reckoning. One man brought his legacy. The other brought the future. And in a room built to echo old power, a new voice didn't echo. It rewrote the script. Ibrahim Trore didn't ask to be respected. He didn't wait for permission. He didn't shout. He didn't kneel. He just stood, and that was enough. Because some men lead by applause. Others lead when the applause fades and the world still listens. Trump thought he could control the conversation. Traoré proved that the conversation had already moved on, and maybe, just maybe, the world did too.